Live from SABC studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, welcome to this week's second edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. Thank you for tuning in. On the show tonight, Struggle Stalwart Foundations weigh in on that damning report that President Cyril Ramaphosa released yesterday. This while the president's men and women are out and about creating hype around his Thursday State of the Nation address. His opponents, meanwhile, tell us why they don't have high expectations.
Order. Honorable. I'm really sorry. Order, please. Order, honorable members. Order, please.
The warning signs were there for all to see, but the country's security cluster blatantly disregarded them. And that's only one of the many damning findings made by the expert panel appointed by President Cyril Ramaphosa to look into last July's unrest. The panel also says Cabinet must take full accountability for the violence, the looting, and the almost 350 deaths that occurred. Now, among the people who have, over the past 24 hours, found some time to read and reflect on the report are Nelson Mandela Foundation CEO Silo Hatang and the Tambo Foundation trustee, Dr. Mvuyo Dom. Good evening to both of you, gentlemen, and thank you very much for your time this evening. But let me start by asking you, Mr. Hatang, just what you made overall of what you were able to read.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Good evening, Dr. Tom. You know, the report makes for a sad reading. Dereliction of duty. In some instances, even when people had an opportunity to do something, there was paralysis. And I think it also speaks to things that the Adelaide Tambo Foundation and ourselves, the Kathrada Foundation, have raised over and over, that our socio-economic situation, poverty and inequality as it is now, is unsustainable. And that the report comes to also a conclusion that unless something changes drastically, it's not about how long it's going to be, it's just about when, not if rather, but when the next such violence will take place. But even more disturbing, Vuyo, is how the report says that critical meetings were not being held. There's a committee that is chaired by the president, for example, that didn't sit for a while. And when the police got signs that something was going on, and the intelligence services claimed that they then gave them the tools to say, hey, something is brewing, they ignored all that. It makes us to think, are we safe? It begins to make you wonder whether the criminals who are going rogue and just going completely out of control, if we will ever be able to control them. And it also makes us wonder if there's political will to deal with issues of poverty and inequality. And that's the one part that worries me even more, because for as long as we don't do anything to change the plight of our people, even those who have been the customers of small shops, for example, who we met when we went to KZN after the violence, and they said, these are people we know. And suddenly they broke into our shops and we had to watch them as they were doing so. And I think it says that we need to do more to change the plight of our people.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Tom?
Good evening, Vuyo. Good evening, Cyril. And thank you for inviting me to this session. Yes, indeed, I would echo some of the points raised by the Nelson Mandela Foundation CEO in this regard. Indeed, most of the things that appear in that report have been talked about by people already in various ways. At the time of the uprising and in the time of the interviews that were held with the various stakeholders, it's quite clear that there was no unity of purpose and unity of action in terms of government. And therefore, it's an indictment on our system of government. It's an indictment on our security forces, not just the police, but also the defense force and the intelligence, who are supposed to coordinate security issues in the country. One wonders what would happen when there is an external force attacking this country. When serious omissions take place within a government. And in terms of accountability, of course, this report raises the issue of accountability. And that's one of the values the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation stands for. We have to be accountable for all our actions, whether we committed an offense or we omitted to do something that is supposed to have been done for the benefit of the people of South Africa. It's a serious indictment, and it's something that needs to be dealt with very thoroughly. And the report does go through the issues, stakeholder by stakeholder, of course, saying who was supposed to have done what and what was not done. So it's a terrible read when you go through it, and it's something that must be addressed by the government of South Africa. So I agree in full with the points raised by the Nelson Mandela Foundation CEO. And of course, the people are talking about it right now and raising the points that are dealt with in that report about the responsibility, whether it's the minister, whether it's the president, whether it's the commissioner of police. So it's really something that needs to be done to deal with the accountability issues. However, I think we also need to go back to then. Who was responsible for this? If it was a coordinated action, as pointers indicate, who was responsible for this? Who could sit in corners and think about an attack on the country, being citizens of the country? And so still something must be done in that regard. Of course, the socio-economic issues that are being raised, it's a perennial challenge that this country has faced since our freedom. We need to address the socio-economic issues. The Constitution is quite clear about what needs to be done, and it's us who need to act. All stakeholders, the public sector, private sector, non-governmental organization, the people of South Africa, we need to make sure that for once we behave as a nation, the nation of the people of South Africa, and deal with the issues that are confronting us together in partnership. So that's the point I want to emphasize, that all of us need to act on this. Who
should be held accountable, Dr. Tom? Who does the final responsibility, when everything has been said and done, when you've gone through everything that the report says, who, from where you sit, should be held accountable?
Of course, there's a saying in one of Shakespeare's books, writing about kings and leaders, that uneasy is the head that wears the crown. So ultimately, the issues will go back to the president of the country, who appoints ministers, who holds ministers accountable, who deals with ministers when they omit to do what they are supposed to be doing, and who deals with ministers when they commit things that they are not supposed to be doing. So when it comes to ministers, the president has got to take that. Of course, with his whole cabinet, they are held accountable in this report. Mm-hmm. Because even the commissioner of police, well, of course, the commissioner also accounts to parliament. So the commissioner of police will have to face parliament and have the responsibility he had the responsibility to coordinate the police at that stage. So that's part of the issues. So the cabinet, the president being the leader of that cabinet, and therefore we expect him to pronounce on what actions he's going to take in regard to issues that relate to the presidency.
Do you share that thought, Mr. Atang?
I share the same thought, and in fact, I'd go even further. That I would say that individuals who are actually named, that so-and-so Minister of Defense, for example, should have done this, and she then said no, she couldn't because she was waiting for the Minister of Police to be the one who gives the go-ahead to say we need help, and the report says clearly. This is not true. All you need is just to also assess on the ground what's happening, and also then listen to the president's own assessment. And I think if we are to do anything, I want to go back to what Dr. Tom said about the people who did this. The report, and we will leave this at our own peril if we forget it. The report says, we must not forget that there are people who actually orchestrated this. Mm-hmm. And you'd remember that a few days after the chaos had now subsided a bit, the Minister of Police then came on our TVs and radios and said, we know who they are. I think he named the number 12. Mm. And I think if those 12 apostles can be found, they then need to be paraded in front of all of our courts to say, these are the people who did it. And of course, if the report is anything to go by, these should be forces who are very strong within the ANC and within the intelligence services who would have done this, and therefore they are untouchable, in other words. And I think if you can have a country like that, it means that we are all in trouble. I want to also remind us that July has not stopped, has not ended, in other words. Because a few days ago, Vuyo, you'd remember that there's a story about the head office of our Secret Service having been broken into. It tells you that by a homeless person, they said. It tells you that our systems are so porous. That if those who actually should be the guardians of our democracy can have their own house, their own offices broken into, who are we to not have our homes being vulnerable? Who are we to not have our businesses, not to have our organizations vulnerable to any kind of attack, whether it be cyber or physical? The cathedral, just a few days ago, the cathedral out in Cape Town was also a victim of an arson attack. And again, it says something about where we are as a country. And this report names some of these things. And if we don't do anything about it, we are in trouble.
You see, the dereliction of duty that Mr. Atang you spoke about doesn't only apply to the politicians, the people who have political responsibility for whether it's defense or intelligence or the police. The expert panel also found that intelligence services, these are now the public servants who are employed, who shouldn't have a bias, who should be doing their job, period. Right? These people were hesitant to gather information on persons. We're not talking about acting here. We're talking about the first steps, of what they are supposed to do. They were not prepared to gather information on persons with a political profile for fear of being castigated for interfering in politics. Should we be having such people occupying, these very important positions that if they were to do their job, then we would all know, none of us would be asking whether are we safe, because we would know. We would know. What this is telling us is that these people are not prepared to, to do their jobs. And that's why we should feel very unsafe. We should feel that we are in very, very serious danger. Dr. Tom?
Vuyo, when it comes to the State Security Agency and the intelligence services in this country, there's a report that was written by Dr. Sidney Mufamadi. And some of the issues that are being expressed in this report by the experts are repeating the same issues that were raised in that report. So the inertia that is there within a government to deal with issues is going to leave us exposed as a nation. There is a litany of issues that is raised about the state security services in this country. The lack of coordination, the duplication, and recommendations that were made about rationalization, and they are being repeated again. So much as individuals may be pointed at, but there's also a systemic problem that is facing us. I don't even want to call it a challenge. It's a serious problem that is facing this country of organizations or state organizations working in different directions and no unity. And I want to repeat that because that's one of the issues from Tambo's perspective that made him successful as a leader of an organization. Unity of action, making sure that one arm understands what is being done by the other arm, making sure that there's cohesion when it comes to acting. If you had 4 pillars of struggle during Tambo's period, and they were so coordinated, we should be looking at those experiences. How did we coordinate mass action, an underground struggle, an armed struggle, and mass mobilization? How did we coordinate that? Why can't we coordinate that in government? Why can't we work together? So it comes back to, am I in government because I am dealing with my own career, or am I in government to serve the people of South Africa? If you are going to be in government to serve the people of South Africa, then you'll work with the people, you'll work with other people that are involved in the same action that you want to achieve. That is to ensure that the people of this country benefit from the freedom that they've struggled for. So this action of disparate persons first and disparate structures of government is not going to yield the results that we all yearn for. A nation that is prosperous, a nation that is enjoying the freedom, a nation that is safe where they are supposed to be in their own country, safe from people around you and safe from your own nation. How could we be fighting amongst each other like we are doing? So the intelligence services, for an intelligence service, one of the things is to preempt what is happening. You detect things quite soon and quickly. And once you have detected, you prevent them from happening. And when they start happening, the other coordinated action must make sure that whoever is responsible for it is apprehended quickly and dealt with. So these are some of the basics that people should be dealing with in intelligence.
Dr. Tom talks about coordination, talks about the one hand, not knowing what the other was doing. And one would have thought that is the very reason you have a cabinet in the first place. It's so that all these people with the executive powers who are responsible for virtually each and every corner or aspect of our lives are able to sit together in one meeting, know what each one of them is doing, so that they know where to chip in or where to come in. And where there is no direction, then the man who's occupying the top seat is able to immediately intervene and make sure that each and every member of the executive does what they are supposed to do. As everyone, is looking forward to Thursday evening State of the Nation address, is there something you can point to that has happened in the past which gives us the confidence that cabinet will have gone to that, or when the president speaks on Thursday, he will have done a very thorough and perhaps deep and wide analysis of what actually happened, place themselves where they were supposed to be, and be honest about the fact that they were not where they are supposed to be. As the report says, they should all take accountability, and be decisive about where the blame should be, who should take responsibility, and what needs to happen next. Is there an experience that we can point to that suggests that things will be different this time around?
I'm sitting here thinking of the mirrored reports that have been released before. Whenever there's a crisis, we've become a country that specializes in commissions. And this goes back, by the way, it's not just a post-apartheid thing. It goes back to during the times of the apartheid government. There would be the Margot Commission, there would be the Goldstein Commission, we are a country that then has a way of compiling these reports. In recent history, we've got the Arms Deal Commission, the Security Commission, and now the latest one being Zondo Commission. We've got the panel which has released its report, and I think one will be hard at finding any evidence that those reports were ever implemented fully. The Truth Commission being the biggest indictment on our country's history. And I think if we are to do anything, I think for me, the key thing is to go back to what next. And on Thursday, for example, it would be great if the president says, I had a meeting with the Minister of Police, and I had the meeting of the High Command of the Police, and we have now identified these people, and they will be handed over, dockets will be handed over to the NPA after their arrest, and they will be charged accordingly. That would be the first biggest prize. The second one, I would say, is steps to say, this is how we're going to clean up our intelligence services, because we are now told that they are paralyzed by factional battles within the ANC. The second one is, the third one would be around cleaning up the police. You can't have a situation where you don't have a commissioner, for example, because one is acting at the moment. So the high command of the police is also just as dysfunctional. ISS has pointed out that our greatest weakness lies in the leadership of the police, because when they don't give that leadership, it means that those lower down can't do their jobs effectively because they know there's no consequences. The last thing I would say is restoring trust in the state. And I think if we are to restore that trust in the state, it means that for everything that the president would make announcements on Thursday. It starts with making sure that we rebuild systems of governance, so that each one of those systems which were broken down by the previous government, juniorization of those government departments, complete breakdown of them by putting in inefficient people, etc. That needs to be the focus, that we then say, how do we rebuild the power of the state to be able to do what is right? And I would say, if we are to do that right, it means that what Dr. Tom was saying earlier on will even give us more impetus as a civil society, as members of the public even who have something to give, for us to begin to say, how do I help my fellow citizen who has nothing? And I now need to make sure that we share the little bread that we have in order to then take us forward to the country that Madiba dreamt of. And I think until such time that we reach that point, most people would then be saying, it's not my responsibility. I'm therefore just going to be leaving it to those who are in power to do so. And I think that's the wrong way to do it. We need to take ownership of the state and how it runs, not government, because there's a government. The state needs to then be making sure that we make sure that the state looks after its most vulnerable, its little citizen who has nothing but the defense of government to make sure that they can do something that is right.
Dr. Tom, as I ask you to also make your concluding remarks, maybe I should just bring a few of the tweets that have come through. South Africans seemingly not very hopeful. Something is going to happen or things are going to change. Pudzo Mulobezi saying, July unrest report is just a piece of paper. No one will be arrested in cabinet. ANC will never be accountable to anyone. Martin Msimek is saying, it is unfortunate that we are where we are now, having leaders who should have taken a lead in the upholding of the rule of law from the cabinet leaders. I don't know if you're able to bring another one, just the last one before Dr. Tom. Okay, let's leave it there for now. Dr. Tom, just your concluding remarks.
Thank you, Vuyo. Most of we seem to be echoing the same issues with Silo. And I want to touch on the point that he raised about trust. And I would add the word confidence. We need to have confidence in our government. And it is the actions of government that will make us have trust and confidence in government. I feel for the president, and I feel for those who are seriously thinking that they need to take action and deal with these things. But they have to take action. It is only the actions that are in line with the Constitution for people who are behaving unconstitutionally and for people who are not sticking to the rule of law. It is those actions against those people that will restore confidence in the president first, and also in the government of this country. We need to see what happens with this report, what happens with the Zondo Commission report, what happens with resolutions that have been taken by the party in terms of dealing with corruption, and the party moving in unison into government to deal with the issues. It's only when those actions are taken that the people of South Africa will have confidence and trust in our government. They need to act. They've been given the mandate to rule and to be in power for a 5-year period, and they need to ensure that what they promised the people of this country on day one of the State of Nation address that brought this term of government into action, they need to act on those things. And this report, as the tweet said there, should not just be a piece of paper that remains in shelves. It must be a piece of paper that is acted upon. The State of Nation decisions that are taken by government and endorsed by Parliament after debates must be actioned. So that's the only way the socio-economic issues of this country can be dealt with. That's the only way the criminal justice system of this country can be dealt with. That's the only way the social needs of the people of South Africa can be dealt with. Okay. Action, 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 not words anymore. The words are there. The words were given impetus by the people when they said, we vote for you to deal with the issues that we have put in your manifesto. Deal with them. We need to act and ensure that we work together. And of course, I also appeal to other stakeholders, other partners, not just government, to assist in addressing the socio-economic state of this country. Okay. The unemployment rate is so huge, intolerably so. And the private sector must play its role also in dealing with that. So that these people who coordinate these actions don't find people that can support their actions. If we deal with the socio-economic issues of this country, then there won't be that base of what is called a lumpen proletariat that can be used by anybody who wants to promise them that they can change the status quo.
Well, we will indeed see in about 48 hours whether the president does indeed have the will to move the country forward, as Mr. Atang was saying. And we'll see, Dr. Tom, whether indeed the endless meetings at NEDLEC that were supposed to thresh out an economic recovery plan for the country, where organized business, labor, civil society and the government have been meeting, whether anything has come out of those deliberations. In other words, all the stakeholders, or each and every one of them, are playing their part. And from what we understand, there have been meetings over the past couple of days to try and find some consensus that will make its way to the president's speech. But whether it indeed, or that consensus, or whatever they will have discussed, moves the country forward is what remains to be seen. Dr. Mvuyo Tom, who is a trustee of the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation, and Silo Atang, who is the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Struggle Hero Foundations, making their input to that damning report that the president said should be released yesterday, and not a single soul has been able to pick up anything positive from what has been said and written. Up next, we continue the build-up to President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address. Don't go away. The fuss is about, why you should bother, what's the point of it all? Well, according to a government communications poster circulated earlier today, here's why you should care about Thursday evening's address. It matters because it's the program. It tells you about the program of the government for the year. So you need to know that because it affects you directly. And if you still unsure, SONA matters because it also reflects on the country's domestic and international affairs. It also highlights the plans and projects for the year ahead, but also it sets the political program for Parliament for the year. It also creates a transparency with the public and accountability on the part of the government. That's how, that's what government communications says is what you should keep in mind over the next couple of weeks couple of days, I should say, and that's why you should watch our coverage over the next 48 hours as we build up to that State of the Nation, which we will be taking live here on the SABC News channel. In fact, we'll be starting right in the morning with Morning Live on Thursday, throughout the day, building up to the address itself in the evening, including, of course, the pomp and ceremony that usually accompanies these things. Of course, going to be toned down this time around because of all the things, what has been happening over the past couple of years, costs and everything else. But we'll be bringing you everything there is, everything we'll be able to see with our own eyes and that our cameras will be able to pick up. Now, today, here's what kept government communicators busy. Handful of cabinet ministers and deputies were going in and around Cape Town, creating hype around the president's address, conducting oversight visits, we are told, pre-awareness outreach campaigns, all to create a buzz around that address. Take a listen to what the minister in the presidency had to say as they were crisscrossing the city and that province.
We have also asked them, a number of them, now that the president is addressing the nation on Thursday, what do they think? The most important thing is jobs.
No surprises there. South Africans care about jobs. What the president's political opponents, though, aren't expecting much on that front and others.
It will be the second time that the State of the Nation address is delivered under the national state of disaster. It has been extended for a month until next week, Tuesday.
The state of disaster must end, and it must end right away. And that is to make sure that we can remove the uncertainty that still hangs over businesses desperately trying to make a comeback in South Africa. Everything that we do this year must be focused on retaining and bringing back jobs and by helping businesses to survive.
Steenhuisen also criticized the composition of the Judicial Service Commission and some of the questions posed to judges during last week's marathon interviews for the position of the Chief Justice. He says his party will table a bill in Parliament to reform the JSC's composition. At least one party wants the president to come up with solutions to fight crime and abolish black economic empowerment policies, while another wants the president to resign, saying he has failed to deliver on his promises.
They will look at the amendment of labor laws, do away with black economic empowerment and affirmative action. The president must also explain why did they decrease the budget for police and how can you effectively fight crime with a decreased budget. And he must tell us then how he as government is going to ensure that the people of South Africa are safe.
As the ATM, we really expect Mr. Ramaphosa to tender his resignation. He has failed the country countless times. He was elected as a president of the country in 2018. 4 SONAs later, we are yet to see any tangible improvement in the lives of the people of our country. Instead, we are seeing an increase in corruption, increase in unemployment, increase in the cost of living.
President Ramaphosa will deliver the State of the Nation address at the Cape Town City Hall on Thursday evening. Lula Mamatya, SABC News, Parliament.
So only politicians, though, who are letting their feelings, hopes and aspirations to be known. So too do other South Africans across the board. Unemployed Eastern Cape graduates are hoping that this year's State of the Nation address will bring much-needed solutions to the province that, with 47.1%, has the highest unemployment rate. Anda Nguji tells their stories.
Education is the key to success. The phrase that has driven millions of young people across the country to seek tertiary qualifications. But for many graduates in the Eastern Cape, this is proving to be a challenge. 24-year-old Asanda Marx is part of the statistics of unemployed graduates. She has 2 degrees but is still unemployed. Her hopes and dreams are slowly fading away.
When you come from an underprivileged background and you go to varsity and you are the first one from your home that you're going to varsity, so people have those high expectations. But you know what, after Asana graduates, you know, everything will be spruce, the grass will be greener, but it's not like that. And the pressure of the society, because they've seen me time to time going to varsity, like not even sleeping and having those late nights and early mornings trying to study.
Asanda first graduated in 2018, but due to lack of employment, she enrolled for a 2nd degree. Her only hope now is self-employment.
The government must try, especially in educational institutions, to equip people not to be employees but employers, you know, because I believe if he could go into that space and try and make people to be employees more than employers, then the unemployment rate, especially in the Eastern Cape, because I think it's the province that takes #1, you know, in South Africa. So if he could try and give people those skills.
SMMEs might be the solution to job scarcity, but access to funding seems to be a challenge.
It is very critical that we address the issue of the access to funding. As I said, there's many stringent processes before our people access the funds. You will recall last year that President announced a sum of 200 billion rands that was meant for a relief, but very few black SMMEs access that. And now he has not minced his words to say we've got to engage, as he continues to engage the banks and every stakeholder that is involved, to say how do we unlock that and make sure that we can relax the criteria.
The Eastern Cape is regarded as the poorest province in the country. The province had the largest employment decrease in 2021, recording 66,000 job losses. Residents here hope the president will tackle this and other issues when he addresses the nation. Anda Ngonji, SABC News, Abeja.
Well, experts have been saying, it's unlikely the economy as it stands will create the jobs South Africa needs and at the pace that they are needed. And that, in part, is the reason many are calling for targeted relief for the unemployed, the poor and the destitute. Ngululeko Majozi is a social security researcher with the Studies in Poverty and Inequality Institute, and he will be watching the president's Thursday speech with a keen interest. Good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Well, there's been a lot of toing, and froing on the back of suggestions that are being made, for a decisive intervention for the poor, for the unemployed, and the destitute. The one day we saw the panel meeting with organizations like yours who are of the view that an intervention is needed urgently. The next day, we hear about a group, of people who advise the president, saying it is simply not affordable. It's not the direction we should be taking. And next day, there's another group that releases that comes up with a different perspectives. All these people also advising the president that actually it's the right thing to do. Not only is it the right thing to do, it is also affordable. From what you're picking up on the ground, what's it going to be?
Well, good evening, Will, and thanks for having me. To be honest, in terms of what to expect from the SONA, especially with regards to the issue of the basic income grant, which is what civil society and a lot of us research institutions have been calling for. We are a bit ambivalent in terms of what to expect, but what we are hoping for is that the president will announce the extension of the COVID-19 social relief of distress grant, which is widely known as the 350 grant in South Africa. But with that, what we are hoping for is that the president will then take measures to make this grant a permanent grant and to put on the legislation to make it a permanent grant, which will then serve as a form of a basic income grant going forward, which will be a permanent grant. In terms of how that grant will be articulated, in terms of whether it will be targeted or whether it will be universal, that is still to be seen as well. But we hope that the president will announce the extension of the social relief of distress grant.
Well, considering who are the people who hold the view and who are part of that collective that advises the president on economic matters, considering also the fact that the finance minister has made similar comments, before, what would convince you that, or what convinces you that the president would do what you, as researchers and civil society organizations, have called for? And I'm asking this because the tendency has been that, the government listens to those people more than it does with organizations like yours.
I think it would be very careless for the government not to listen to civil society and not to even consider the research that has been done and is on the table that proves that a basic income grant or basic income support or basic income guarantee, however you might want to call it, is a real possibility for South Africa, that it is affordable and that it is doable for our country. And especially in light of the civil unrest that we saw last year in July, whereby the devastations that have been caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, which directly affected millions and millions of livelihoods in South Africa. We saw a bloodbath in terms of job losses, and we saw increases in the rates of hunger. I think about last year, about 11 million households were running out of food before the end of the month, experiencing hunger. And in those households, about 3 million children were being affected by hunger. And part of the unrest were a direct result of those pressures that we see from unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And so within this context, and given the research, the plethora of research that we have produced as research institutions that prove that there are a number of ways in which South Africa could fund the basic income guarantee for the country's citizens, and that it is affordable, it would be very careless for our government not to take this into consideration and to keep on falling to or succumbing to the pressure of business, of the business sector, and those that are much more conservative in terms of the policy, the economic policies that should be implemented by the country. I mean, we've seen also with the budgets that we have been undergoing austerity measures in terms of the budget, and within the economic crisis that we see, that is not helping. Limiting spending on social services and social security does not do us any good. We need to be spending more money to support people's livelihoods and basic income.
We'll see what comes out of it on Thursday when President Cyril Ramaphosa finally delivers that much-awaited State of the Nation address. Nkululeko Majozi was a social security researcher with the Studies in Poverty and Inequality Institute. Now, Parliament, meanwhile, says it's all systems go for Thursday's address.
Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Parliament has largely been conducting its work virtually. When asked why this SONA could also not be held virtually, since this would save Parliament a lot of money, the Speaker said in spite of what the institution had recently experienced, political parties have agreed to show up in the spirit of solidarity.
That act was meant to disrupt the workings of Parliament. Then it was important for us to take this political decision that no burning of a parliamentary building, no amount of sabotage will actually distract us from holding the State of the Nation address.
4 million rand has been set aside for the SONA debate and the President's reply to the debate. Of this, 1.9 million has been budgeted for the day of SONA. In keeping with COVID regulations, not all MPs will be attending in person.
The proportional representation of political parties was a key consideration in allocating seats for members of Parliament. The National Assembly will be represented by 238 members of Parliament physically present in the House, whilst the National Council of Provinces will have 60 permanent delegates present, including the provincial premiers and SALGA representatives.
Guests who have already confirmed their attendance include former President Thabo Mbeki, former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, and former Speakers Baleka Mbete and Dr. Frini Jinwala. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
And that's our program for tonight. To join us again tomorrow evening, sharp. 8 o'clock sharp. Good night.